All right, geez, some of you lot are impatient. My goodness, 7:30 start from Vince T-Bird. Would love an 8:30 start. Sometimes technology doesn't go your way when you want it to. So, no, I had to do a full reboot of my internet because none of my web browsers were loading. So I couldn't actually get into the online studio and send Carl and Grok the link. So that's why we were a touch late. But good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well after you copped that little spray. Long time between drinks from a game perspective. But yes, not another good week for the Tiger front. But Carl, welcome back to the show, mate. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks, Michael. It's good to be with you again. Yes, going well. I don't think the same can be said about the Tigers at the moment. We've had a couple of shockers, and I think we really fell apart against the D's, which I think it largely has got to do with their injury toll, not being able to play 4 quarters. But I'm sure we'll delve into that as the show unfolds.
Yes, there's a few things at play. I think there just needs to be a level of acceptance of where we're at currently with all the things that are going on. You can't polish a turd, as they say. We may as well just accept it for what it is and not sugarcoat it too much. But I even found myself the other day, and I've got it up on my other screen, but looking at even what the draft hand is at the moment, which is something we've not really cared about for quite a number of years. But this year it's very real that we're looking, at what kind of draft picks we're going to have towards the point end of the year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's something to be looked at, and then obviously our staff are ever evolving there on that front too. Our list management strategy could be a lot different going into this season's draft and compared to past seasons. So I'm looking forward to seeing what if any strategy we have at the end of the year. But that's still a fair way away yet, Michaels.
It is. And for those wondering, so Grok will be joining us shortly, I believe. Now, Tiggs has advised today that he will be okay for a little short stint next week, and he does have some groundbreaking news to drop with everybody. He didn't tell me what it was. He does like to keep that secret to get my reaction to, but he said it's something the media haven't caught wind of yet. Now, I don't know if that's good, bad, or ugly, but there you go. I won't steal his thunder on the other bits he said as well. I'll let him deliver the news on a few other players' fronts, but needless to say, it was probably against odds to what a few of us think. So yes, make sure you tune next week for that. But anyway, we will get cracking on to the game at hand, Richmond v Melbourne. Richmond 5-12-42, defeated by Melbourne 13-7-85 by 43 points. Looking at the disposal numbers, Dan Rioli was best for us with 23. That in itself is a real sore point, I think. Jacob Hopper, 23. He was arguably best on ground for us until he hurt himself in his first game back. Liam Baker, 23. Thompson down to 22. Alarming, I think the number one stat holder on the ground, this speaks volumes about how the game panned out for us, which was Jake Lever with 26 disposals. I actually thought, Carl, that between the arcs and moving it from defence forward, I thought we actually won the battle for a lot of the game. We just had nothing going forward. We just broke down completely.
Yeah, it was a pretty lackluster affair in the first half. I mean, we were in it. There's no denying that, and it's fair to say Melbourne probably were a bit off to start with, and I think we sort of capitalised on that to sort of stay level pegging for the first half, and then I think Goodwin fired up the troops after halftime because they came out firing, and were clearly too good. But I think our youngsters are pretty burnt out. They're taking a load, while they're developing, as footballers, and it's a very different Richmond side that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of players that have played a lot of VFL football finally getting opportunities that they sort of haven't had in the dimmer era in the past few years. We're seeing the development of Thompson Dow. I don't think he's getting enough credit for the contribution he's making. I know he's always had the talent, but he just hasn't had the consistency at AFL level. And I think we're starting to see what he's about as a footballer. And I'm excited to see what more he can bring to the table. So, I mean, that's just one player to mention, but you've got. I'm going to say Sonzi. He's sort of been in and out, but I think his VFL game warrants being selected at AFL level again. I don't know why he got dropped in the first place, to be honest. So I'd like to see him return this week. Whether he does or not, that's obviously not.
Well,
we can't tell. We won't know. But
no, I mean, you think it's out of him and
came as a
McAuliffe.
shock.
And on the Dow point, I know a lot of people maybe jumped on his back maybe a little bit too early when he had a couple of down games early on. But he's also very young, and he did miss a substantial amount of footy not too long ago with glandular fever. So he's still probably piecing it all together himself, but I really liked what he's offered. It's probably just needs a little bit more size, but the exposure he's getting is going to hold him in good stead. I just would really love for him to have some proper support around him, because you don't want to expose 3 young kids against, bloody Viney, Gorn, Petrarca. I don't think that's good to do, but the kids are doing their best, aren't they? And I agree with Sonzi. I want him back in. And you look at the VFL game, Sonzi had a ton of the ball. And where was he playing? In the guts. It's his natural habitat. We tend to play him on the half-forward line for whatever reason that may be at AFL level. But I think if we bring him back in, if it's not McAuliffe and it's Sonzi, then we've got to play him in the middle. Give him a chance.
Yeah, and I think, we've seen a small dose of McAuliffe so far, but it's his first season. So, I think it's really good that he's been afforded the opportunities he's been given so far. But I think we need to be rewarding the players that have been on our list for a little while and ensuring that they're getting more games at AFL level. And that's probably what the emphasis is going to turn towards now with this season, because clearly we're struggling with our fitness, and that's an area that needs to evolve. And I'm sure there's a lot of effort going in there to try and get the guys up and running that have been on the longer term injury list, or even short term injury list. Like, there's just been too many injuries that hasn't helped our situation. And on that front, I feel a little sorry for Adamuze. Like, you can't really predict these injuries. They're your serial offenders. Like, obviously Dion Presti has had some soft tissue issues over the years, which, is that going to haunt him, at the end of this season? It wouldn't shock me if it forces him potentially into an early retirement. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I really hope it doesn't, because I love Dion and his contribution. But I just think some big questions need to be asked of our list management strategy moving forward, because it's probably fair to say there's a few players that have had niggly injuries that sort of you think they're finding some form and they reappear again. So I wouldn't be surprised if some questions are being asked there about what we're going to do moving forward on that front.
And I think when you're talking about someone like Prestia, especially the older guys, Grimes as well, to an extent, they've been around the traps long enough that they understand their bodies, and they're probably realists and understand their bodies letting them down more often than not, which is not good for their own health and well-being. But I think there comes a point where they probably recognise it's not good for the club either in some instances too. But I mean, Grimes obviously played on the weekend, did okay. We'll get to his almost moment of glory later with CB. But I don't know. It's still that it comes back to, are we better off getting 10 or 15 more games into another young kid, or persevering with them? And, when Presti comes back, sadly, I think it has to be, you have to have a look at the VFL. I don't think we can risk, pinging hammies in the first quarter again. But, I won't be shocked if there's a little bit of a clean out, might not be the right word, but a changeover of list come year's end.
Yeah. And I'm not saying go full Hawthorn strategy-wise, like just left, right and centre, get rid of senior players that have been there and helped through a successful period. But, I think that it just needs to be looked at. And we're realising that this season there's a few players that maybe should have pursued other opportunities elsewhere, or even retired earlier than what they have. And I can understand, we lost Koch and we lost Rewalt last year, and they're two club stalwarts that did so much for the club and leadership-wise added so much. Rewalt, the fact that he played on last year was crazy, and even Koch to some degree as well. But, no one's in a position to really tell club legends like that, it's your time. You know, we
No,
were
no, that's
all the
right.
understanding that the time was going to be when they called time.
Yeah,
But I think we're suffering on the leadership front a lot this year. You know, I think it's allowed a player like Vlosten and even maybe Dan Rioli to some degree to step up, and Shorty as well. I've been impressed on the leadership front that what those players are showing. You know, obviously Shorty's out injured at the moment, but Vlosten, I think, has to be up there as far as if not our most consistent player, definitely one of our most consistent players this season. And I've been thrilled to see what he's been offering. I think, you know, he doesn't get the credit he deserves for the contribution he's made. So that's been good to see. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season pans out. But we have to just keep the faith in the kids, and I wouldn't mind seeing some players that are playing VFL, they're on our AFL list, actually getting it go. You know, changing
yeah,
up a little bit. There's a few that aren't really getting spoken about enough, or you know, probably haven't made their debut yet. That probably should be just given a crack, really.
yeah. Good to see someone like Coulthard get a game as well at some point. One of the young players I want to talk about, and I'll ask it in a question to see if people know the answer. I'm sure if people looked at basic stats will know, but on the weekend against Melbourne, our top two clearance winners were on 4 apiece. One of them was Toby Nankervis. Who was the other?
For clearances.
For clearances, Toby Nankervis was equal first on 4.
Mm-hmm.
This other player had 4. Hugo Ralph Smith was equal
Here you go. Very good.
with clearances as well. So Hugo had a really good game. 21 disposals, 10 kicks, 6 marks, 3 tackles, 4 clearances. I think unquestionably his best game for the club to date.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. And I think you recall when I was last on a few weeks ago, I was sort of questioning why he hadn't been given a gig sooner, and spoke about how his run and carry was quite good when he can get the ball off a halfback. And I think we really saw that, you know, last week against Melbourne, and how useful he can be. Probably another highlight for the season so far. Just what he contributed last week. I hope that he can. He's another one of those sort of fringe players that's been in and out of the AFL side in the past couple of seasons that I think deserves to just get more games. Like, I actually can't really understand why it took so long for him to get a gig this year, to be fair. So,
Yeah,
I hope he after that he keeps going.
and it was actually, for me, being there watching him live, it was the power running. Like, there was a couple of times where he was involved in a chain that started in the half back line, and he ended up being almost on the end of it at the half forward line in that same chain of play. So his work rate to get up and down the ground was really quite impressive to see. He has not done anything wrong at all in terms of getting his name put down on the board first thing for the game against Freo. I thought, he was super.
100%. But, you know, I think the name we haven't mentioned so far, who, as far as new recruits coming through, needs the recognition, is Tom Brown. My God. Like, what that guy, he's playing like a 5-year AFL footballer. I can't believe, all I keep seeing on Twitter and social media is highlight videos of what this guy's doing. And you know, he's doing that in the team, like with the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in right now. Imagine what he would have been like a few years ago when we were, you know, playing finals and playing against the best and being competitive. I reckon he would have stood up.
Yeah. And just having those players to learn off. But it's good to see him backing himself with his kicking. He's got a laser kick like we spoke about last time, but he looks settled. Like, he doesn't look out of place whatsoever. And given that the amount of forward 50 entries that oppositions are getting against us for a variety of reasons, he would have every right to maybe go back into his shell, as would the other defenders. But yeah, he's been really, really good. Where did we find him? Was he a latest draft pick? Where was he taken?
Yeah, just another one. I think he was sort of in the 30s thereabouts. From memory, yeah, it was definitely a later pick, but there was a fair bit of talk about him. I think he was he and Sam Banks were at a similar time. I always when I look at them, I thought they were very, very similar looking players.
Yeah,
I think, oh, that's Tom Brady. No, that's Sam Banks. And I suppose I don't really think anybody really expected him to come on this well, though. Like, he's another one of those players that we're probably lucky to have, and I hope plays a lot of good footy for us in the years to come. And he's a part of that, what our future backline, without a doubt. Like the
100%.
formation of that we're starting to see come through. Him and Ben Miller, I think, are doing quite a good job down back at the moment to really help out Vlosten and Rioli, and I mean, of course, Young's back there as well, who I thought had a really great season last year in his first season, but this year sort of been struggling a little bit, and I'm not sure what to sort of put it down to, but I think just playing more, ensuring that he's supported and backed in can only hold him in good stead, and yeah.
I think with Young, a lot of it is he's now the main man, whereas last year he had Bolter the whole year taking the bigger guy, and he was on the second forward. So it's a big step up for any young defender, let alone someone he's still relatively new to the game. But like, it's been funny how our backline, even though we're losing games, our backline's still probably the better performing part of the ground because it's been the most stabilised throughout this last sort of short period with injuries. So yeah, I agree. I think Miller's been doing really, really well. Young, all things considered, doing well. Brown, like we spoke about, Broad and Vlosten add that sort of steady head and calmness to them. It's just the grime spot that I'm not fully sold on, but I really hope they keep that as stable as possible, just for their own learnings.
Yeah, and I know a lot's been said about Bolter and playing him in the forward line. I mean, our forward line is quite depleted right now. Obviously, we haven't got a target down there for the sake of like needing a tall target we can kick to. I'm not sure whether Bolter will be back this week or next week. I wouldn't like to rush him, but when he comes back, I think he'll have to go into the forward line to fill a void that we have right now, and then we just don't have a tall target that's capable of leading for a mark.
100%. He has to. He has to stay forward.
Yeah, I think he has to, but I think when we've got the capability of having a couple of talls in the forward line, or when we realise that it's a necessity and we need that at some point, then I think the question needs to be asked about what we do with Bolter, because he spent a lot of time in our back line, and I think he actually plays better back as a defender. Like, I always sort of saw him as a succession for Grimes. I can't really understand why they want to play him forward. Like, I've made this point before. I feel like we move the magnets a lot with players, and it's sort of detrimental to their development. And I've never quite understood why we do it.
Yeah, and he's definitely one of those players.
Probably one of those. Yeah,
100%. Like, he's played as relief ruck, he's played as a backman, as a forward, and he can do all three things really well. But I suppose we're not letting him master a certain area, and we're definitely challenging him in that aspect. I suppose I always thought he was probably going to be taking over the defensive role as well, and I reckon him going forward maybe had a little bit to do with the trade targets we were looking at coming off the table. Then we had to sort of kick in a bit of a plan C or plan D, and maybe it was out of he and Gibcus goes down, so Bolter's the man. But I think for the initial short term, he'll definitely have to play there. But we need two of them. We need one at each end, just so we can have one of them kick it 70 metres to the other and he can goal.
I think the bigger question that needs to be asked, though, is what's going on with Samson Ryan, and why isn't he getting a game? Like, I can understand, like, people saying, oh, he's not playing well in the VFL or whatnot, but from what I've seen of Samson Ryan, he is the only fit player on our list right now that can actually play that tall forward role. And he may not get it right. He may not actually mark the ball or, kick a goal from a set shot if he does get a mark. But in the past few years, aside from obviously Tom Lynch and Jack Rewalt, his efficiency to play for the ball and actually take a mark in our forward 50 is an asset to himself. And I don't understand why we wouldn't take a risk and throw him in there. Like, I know obviously we recruited Kaczynski and the plan was to have him sort of alternate in the ruck and play forward, but it just hasn't
Yeah.
worked. And we've brought Naismith in, and he tried to play him forward. And I like what Naismith brings to us, but he's just not a forward, like it showed that he just can't do that.
Yeah.
So I just question what our strategy here is there. Like I don't know what the thought process is there.
Yeah, I mean, for a couple of weeks, I was probably a big fan of Naismith coming in without really knowing how he would handle the forward part of it, which obviously hasn't gone totally to plan. But from the ruck perspective, he did really well. I suppose it comes down to what do we value more, like if Samson Ryan, and I mean the result is the result anyway, but if Samson Ryan was in the ruck against Gawn, he would have got monstered like he did in pre-season. So is there room for all three? Do we probably become too slow if we've got two ruckmen and Samson up forward, I'm guessing. But to your point, we need a forward target, and he's the biggest tall key forward target we've got left.
Yeah.
Who has been kicking goals in the VFL, mind you, so he has actually got goal-kicking form. I suppose, though, do we bring him in for games where we can think Nate can ruck the whole game by himself would be probably the only question. But I reckon he's half a chance this week because we were just empty there.
Yeah, and then the other thing I've floated is, Dusty's clearly not got the same capability as the Dusty that in his peak could do anything and win us a game off out of nowhere, like the freak nature that he is. But he's still a quality footballer, and we all love Dusty. I don't understand why we don't, just say, all right, Dusty, play full forward. We haven't got it all. We know that in your marking contest, 9 out of 10 times you're going to take that mark if we kick inside 50 to you, right? And he's shown that. But rather than sort of chuck him through the midfield, which what's he going to do? Win a few clearances and whatnot, and try and make something work. I think it'd be better off just saying, all right, we're going to play in the forward line, Dusty. You're going to play full forward, and you're going to play as that somewhat forward target that can at least try and create something in our forward line, if not mark the ball, be effective disposal-wise to contribute to our score, because we can't execute in our forward line. We can't get a goal, no matter how hard we try. And every time we create forward entries, they're not effective. We're not hitting targets. The ball's not hitting the ground. We're picking it up and kicking goals and snapping goals or anything like that. And I don't think we're short of any talent. I don't think we've got a horrible list. We just can't seem to execute when it goes inside 50. And it's really detrimental to us because there's some games that we've been in within a few goals and we just let our opponents run over the top of us. It's like we've lost. We haven't got confidence to create scoring pressure. And as I said, I don't think we've got a lack of talent that can't do that. And an example of that's McCarthy and what he's been doing with the opportunity he's been afforded. Like he's been incredible with what he's been doing for us in such a short time. It's a credit to himself. Sure. But I feel like a lot of pressure's gone on him pretty quickly, and that he's still trying to understand what his role is to a full extent. So
yeah, definitely. And then I suppose the frustrating thing is the other opposition will then go down within 15 seconds and score a goal in transition. You're like, we have worked our ass off for 5 minutes to try and get 3 shots on goal, and they just go bang. The other part to that is, I think for such a long period of time, our players have trained a certain way. Like I seen a lot of comments about bombing the ball in, and we all see it. I feel like they've trained that for so long that it's just muscle memory that in the clutch of the game when the heat's on, it would be really hard to retrain your brain at a precise moment to not do what you've trained to do day in, day out for the last 4 or 5 years. Because we have had those 2 forwards there and it hasn't really mattered. If the ball was bombed in, we'd be half a chance. But it is frustrating when you see it kicked in long and high and we've got 2 people on the ground just looking at each other like, you're going to go for it? And then no one does it. And then all of a sudden, Lever and May take a mark. But I think a lot of it comes down to it's been part of our game style for so long and how we've trained that it's very hard to untrain that because it's become instinct for all of them. So as much as we all want them to lower their eyes, because it does work and it looks great, I think it's very easy for them to fall into, I don't want to say bad habits, but to fall back into what they were taught to do.
I'm just trying to get a gauge on what our strategy is, because as an outsider looking, at how we're playing, uh, I mean, clearly there's some kind of game plan, and obviously we're changing from something they've known for so long to whatever the new game plan is. But it just seems like the messages aren't sort of getting through to our players as well as maybe Uze and the coaching staff had hoped. Because I know there was a lot of talk of, we're going to be trying this, you're going to be trying that, and obviously it's going to take some time of transition with new coaches and obviously the Dimmer era ending. But I don't know, like, is there anything that stands out to you as far as what we're doing differently as a side, or that we're trying to do? Because nothing really stands out to me that says, I can actually see what we're trying to do here, like, other than obviously utilizing the youth of the past few years that have had to stand up and are going to hopefully form our next premiership side.
I think before the injury crisis kind of struck, the main thing I noticed is we were trying to kick into the corridor a lot more, which we weren't really doing a lot of. But that's when we had a lot more of the senior, more experienced heads who were, I suppose, bold enough to try and do that. But since the rush of injuries, it's kind of just been a bit of a mismatch, like every man for himself almost. Because I suppose there's players now trying to fill or play roles that maybe they haven't necessarily been playing or training for a long period of time. But I think the overarching game plan will be to come inside more often than not. But I think that's easy for teams to counteract too. Like they just kind of guard the corridor and then we're back to just blast kicking down the line. So I do feel for Uze and all the assistant coaches, like it's a revolving door at the moment. So it'd be pretty tough to work with what we've got.
I just see a comment there from David Harris saying, how can you implement a sound game plan with no senior players? And warranted point, 100%. But I think if you look at the years like 2017 onwards, we seem to have a strategy where our VFL side played very similar to how our AFL side played. So I agree in some respects it's very difficult when, obviously you want your best 22 or 23 now playing on the park. But I don't think, it has an effect as far as game plan goes. You generally reflect your VFL game plan should par up very similarly to your AFL game plan. So there's a very similar treasure. I mean, look, that's how it was back then. I can't say that that's how things happen necessarily, evidently these days. That there might be the differences. And obviously with the VFL, you have a lot of players that play sort of community footy and get the chance to play VFL. So you got a bit of a mix there. So there is a point of difference. I just found that interesting there by David. Good call there.
The one thing that I noticed that we did on the weekend that I can't actually remember the last time we did this in a game is Pickett. We tagged someone. Pickett tagged Petrarca for minimum 3.5 quarters. He wore him like an absolute glove. Petrarca still did okay, but I thought it was an interesting role to give Pickett, and it was a bit of a different dynamic. And he got under his skin. He was. Yeah, are we going to see the comeback of the tagger?
Oh, I mean, we might. I think with Marlon, I'm really worried about his disposal efficiency. Like I'm not doubting his leadership or what he adds, because he's everywhere when it comes to the ball. He's always trying to create something, but it just seems like, as far as disposing the ball effectively, he just does like he kicks it and it's like it rolls along the ground a lot of the time. I don't know if you've observed this.
Yeah.
It just seems like that's the one part of his game that's letting him down. He's just it seems like he's too fixated on trying to regain possession and hit a teammate, and it always seems to let him down, which is disappointing.
He deserves more reward.
I mean, he's
for
not the
his
only
effort.
one though.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Spot on.
Yeah, like he's busting his ass. I'll never ever question his attack of the ball, the enthusiasm. It's like his brain's just going a bit too fast, getting it hand to foot. Like he's trying to get too far ahead. I guess he's trying to make a difference in some aspects. Like he's trying to turn the game for us, but it unfortunately just backfires for him a couple of times. But the tagging, not a bad role for him. Like he's got that natural aggression that can really throw a midfielder off their game, I think.
Yeah, well, I think, in the past, Jack Graham's done a pretty good job of tagging some, good opponents. over the years as well. I'm sort of worried about Jack Graham at the moment. I'm not sort of sure what to make of his form. I know obviously he's another one of those players that's been a little bit injured, but uh, do we start asking questions about him and what we make of him? Because the Jack Graham that started with us and was there during the premiership years and applied so much pressure and whatnot. It just seems like a bit of a shadow of that Jack Graham at the moment.
Another player, I've seen Kane mention Mansell a couple of times. Look, he's probably just maybe a little bit of a victim of inconsistency being a younger player, but his good games have been very good. I'm not saying he hasn't played some quiet games, but I would personally persevere with Mansell. I think similar to Pickett, his attack on the man, the ball, and the man with the ball, especially in our front half, is something we desperately need to try and lock it in there when we do get it down there. But it is frustrating when players with that role have a quieter one.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I like what Mansell adds when it's evident, when it's there. Like he can create stuff for us. We've probably been a little bit quiet over the last few weeks. So I mean, I just think we've got some real tired boys. Like where no one could have really predicted what's happened to us happening. Or I mean, I certainly didn't. And they've really had to work extra hard to cater for the fact that we've got a lot of our senior players out. So, I don't want to, put the blame and say, oh, well, Mansell's not playing too well or Graham or anyone. I think it's wrong to sort of, put too much blame on players, But it's clear that, the effort of some can be questioned in some aspects. So.
All right, we'll move on to just a different topic quickly before taking a look at the Freo game. And like we were sort of saying off air, that given the state of our season, it actually does become time we start looking at draft picks and what hand you've got for towards the end of the year. And currently, as it stands now, we have picks 3, 23, 31, 41, 42, 49, 59, 65, and 70. And I believe we have the second highest draft points in the comp as well for the upcoming draft, which is, I feel like this was a very calculated position to be in. Things like that don't just happen randomly. And you saw on the draft or the trade night last year, the amount of picks, draft night where we kept trading out for second and third rounders. I think we're definitely planning on bundling some of these up. So I won't be shocked if we see like the picks 40, 41, 42, 49, 59 bundled up to get into a high pick for those who have academies. I suppose the $1 million question is, how many round one picks can we end up with, do we think, with all of these other picks and plays coming and going?
It's a good question, but I'll raise that question and ask, like, should we be worrying about the draft and finding like a lot of future talent, or should we be looking for sort of some more senior players from other clubs that are seeking opportunity to sort of contribute to the rebuild of our list? Because if you think of, when we first played finals, sort of the 2013 to 2015 period before obviously we had 2016 and went on to our premiership era, we had a lot of sort of fringe players that we recruited from other clubs that sort of contributed to build us up to list strategy wise. So I wouldn't be opposed to, recruiting some key players from other clubs that are looking for opportunity to help build that next step, that next generation for the footy club. But also, I don't know, like how many first round picks do you reckon we should have?
I reckon we could end up with 3. Just quickly, Dom, I know it seems ridiculous talking about the end of year draft in May, but unfortunately, with how our season's panning out, this is the rebuild's on. Whether we like to admit it or not, that's just realistically where we're at. We're not playing finals this year, so it's let's see what our best approach is to get back into contention as quickly as possible. Look, I think we should be trying to aim for at least 2. The third depends on Baker. Sort of hearing conflicting things whether he's staying or going, but regardless of whether we were playing poor this year or not, the stockpiling of those picks was clearly designed to offload to these clubs who've got academy picks. I know those rules are looking at changing. It's technically meant to be 2025, but I have heard that Laura Keane was trying to get it pushed through for this year, but I don't reckon that's going to get across the line because a lot of clubs like us would have made those deals last year on the basis of those rules still being in play. So I don't think it would be fair to then pull the carpet out from under us in that sense. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting period. But yeah, it's two picks in the first round would be a good outcome. And like Nick said there, we've got so many players out of contract at the end of the year, which may have been by design as well, whether we had Dimmer or not. So it's going to be fascinating to see who we hold on to.
Yeah, for sure. But I think we're going to see probably the most amount of change at Tigerland that we've seen in quite some time at the end of the season. Like it's, from what I'm hearing, obviously we're all, under the understanding that it's clear that there's going to be change. No more Dimmer, and some great senior footballers have retired or on the verge of retirement, and then there's some other senior footballers that are still at the club that may pursue opportunities elsewhere back in their home states respectively. And I hope with Baker that he stays with us, but it's sort of like when Alice went to Gold Coast, like he's a player that really I don't think owes the club anything. He's won premierships with us and made a valuable contribution. And, personally, I'd be very disappointed because, I think a lot of people tout Baker potentially as a future captain. And I think it's sort of a bit like, the period when Dusty was weighing up his future and, there was talk he was going to go to Sydney and potentially GWS. But he had that realisation that he could sort of maximise, he could make the most of his career if he stayed at Richmond. Ultimately, I think Baker could make the most of his career at Richmond if he stuck around. So yeah, I'm hopeful that he sticks around. But we as I said, there's going to be some big change at the end of the season. So
yeah, and look, there's no secret that West Coast and Freo are offering big coin for him, but. If we were to go as high as 750, 800,000 and get kind of near what they were offering, I feel like he'll probably stay. Because for me, if you're going to move to Perth, I mean, he's got obviously home ties, which is a bit of a different factor. But if you're talking from a monetary perspective, it'd have to be a substantial amount more to be like, okay, I can't say no to that. So if we were getting close to their offers, I think that obviously weighs into our favour for him staying. But yeah, I don't think we'll strip the cupboard fully bare, but
no,
we can't, because otherwise we'll end up like North Melbourne and Hawthorn, like people said in chat.
We don't want to do. Just put it out there. We don't want that, Michaels. We don't want to do that because we've seen what's happened with them, and okay, similar win-loss ratio to Hawthorn, but we've got a lot more talent I think than what Hawthorn does personally. But that's just what I reckon.
Greg's got a question. Can I ask the question, is all the injuries unlucky or poor conditioning? I reckon it's a combination of both. I think
agreed.
The contact injuries are 100% bad luck. Like if someone breaks a wrist or, fractures an ankle or something like that, that's not on anyone else but just some sheer bad luck in wrong place, wrong time. It's the reoccurrence of the same injuries from older players that maybe questions can be asked on the conditioning staff. If it's a newer player doing that injury, probably just an unlucky thing again. But for me, Carl, it's how the recurring injuries or the players who have them come back and get back into the side. That's probably where the talking point is, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't have a question, in the event of with Hopper there, it was a different injury, but, was he a little bit undercooked going into the game? Like, why did we risk him when it's pretty clear that, we've got a lot of players that are on sort of semi-long injury lists. Like I think it's sort of it's happened with us before though. Particularly in the last few years, it just seems like we've been in a rush to bring back some senior cavalry for the sake of trying to be a little bit more competitive. And I don't really think there's any need. Like why risk a player's health when there are capable players coming through that need the development and should be, getting some more exposure at AFL level. But I think it needs to be addressed. It needs a review because we've just had so many soft tissue injuries that's just not. It just doesn't seem right. The fact that what before the Melbourne game, we appeared to have 26, 27 AFL listed players are actually fit and available. That was a real concern. It's a real worry. So like it just says to me something's clearly not right at the moment on that front.
That's a staggering stat, Vincent. Four ACLs in 5 weeks is ridiculous. And that's not conditioning fault. That is pure bad luck. So I'm not having a shot at the staff there. It's a horrible stat. And even, you look outside our club, Sam Powell-Pepper goes down with an ACL, obviously Bailey Smith at the start of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if we were at an all-time high league-wide for ACL injuries. I don't know why, if the grounds is different or what's happening, but Bauer, another one, Bauer. Just horrible. Like I've had 3 torn ACLs. It's not great, I can assure you. They're all just a little bit of bad luck, those ones. But I think some players were a little bit mismanaged potentially. Like even that first Prestia one, playing 2 games in 5 days, I think all of us thought was a really strange decision given his history. That's probably the big one for me.
Yeah, and to see a comment there, what you think the club is not reviewing this. I think the club are constantly reviewing things like that, but I think the nature of the industry is that people are contracted for certain periods and whatnot, and if something is occurring that needs to be addressed, I have no doubt that it's being addressed in the background, but you can't necessarily make changes or effective changes until the conclusion of a season. So I think we will see, as I said, I keep banging on about this. We're going to see a lot of change at the end of the season, and it's not going to come as a shock, I don't think, either.
No, I don't think so. All right, on to the game against the Dockers this weekend, Sunday at the G, 1 o'clock, I think it is. The Dockers are actually playing a lot better than I thought they would be this year, believe it or not. I didn't really have them winning this many games. I kind of had them in my bottom 6. I know there's a long way to go still, but they're definitely getting the job done. Fife is playing career best form, you could almost argue. He had a bit of a quiet patch earlier on in the year, and I traded him out of Supercoach, so that was fantastic timing by me. They've obviously got Sean Darcy back, who's now partnering up with Luke Jackson. Sharp's doing some good things. Sarong is having a ridiculous year, just winning a monster amount of the ball. How are we going to? This is all games are danger games for us because of our demographic at the moment, but they need to prove themselves on the road, and they're going to be right up for the fight for this one. And it's going to be a tough one for us. But I also feel like this is a winnable game for us too. At the same time, it's going to take a good effort from us, but it's one I think we can win. Yeah,
certainly winnable. But Fremantle played the MCG quite well as well. There's been a number of games where they've seemed like they go into a game as the underdog and not likely to win, and they've pulled wins out of nowhere. They like playing the MCG, so we shouldn't go into it thinking that it's going to be an easy game and that we're the favourites. I mean, I don't think we will be the favourites, quite frankly. Unfortunately, I'd like to say that we will be, but I think it's going to be a great game, and I think it'd be a lot closer than people probably think. But people probably say, well, you got to pick Freo and they'll beat us. But if it just stems back to the point of whether we can play 4 quarters against them. If we can match them, or even 3 good quarters, and the third good quarter happens to be the last quarter, I wouldn't be opposed to that as well. But we can't let them put score pressure on in one quarter that's ultimately dictates the result, because that seems to be something that's killing us. Our opponent has 1 good quarter and we just can't come back from that. So I think if we can keep within a couple of goals, it's manageable. But also, we need to be hitting targets inside our forward 50. So, I don't think it's too much of a worry. Like our clearance work, we can manage that effectively enough where, it can be sort of even pegging through the midfield and even through our backline. I think our backline's holding up enough. It's just we need to, find a way to move the ball forward and create forward pressure, scoring pressure. And if we can do that, I think ultimately that's what's going to create a reasonable matchup against Fremantle.
Do we have any players set to come back this week? I know Short and Bolt are close-ish. Trezise also very close. Are any of them this week? Do we know? Does anyone heard? I don't. For some reason, I didn't think they were. I thought it was more next week.
No, I think I'm with you. Yeah, they were sort of 1 week to 2 week projects, but they're probably the most likely out of the crop that have been injured to come back.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. But I don't think there's going to be too much change as far as our lineup goes. I think if
So
anything, I'd like to see Ryan come in.
yeah, so obviously we're going to have Hopper out as a forced change. Are
Yeah.
you Sonzi or McCall, if I'm guessing, have to be the one of them to get the call up? And then if you're saying Samson Ryan, who would it be just for Naismith, just straight swap?
I think so. Yeah. I think, what have we got to lose by giving him a go? Just give him a go. And then for all those saying, oh, well, he's not playing well in the VFL, he's not cutting it. If he comes in and he doesn't do what I would hope to see him do and, play as that forward target, then, okay, all right, I was wrong. Fair enough. Clearly things have changed and he's not up to it right now. But what's our strategy going to be moving forward? Like, how can we put scoring pressure on to the point where we're not just getting blown out in games? Like, what do we do? Do we utilize chipping the ball in and hitting targets so that we're close enough to the goal to be able to execute in our forward 50? Like, just find a strategy that's going to work, whatever that may be. We've got to find something because it's just something's not quite right at the moment. And we can't expect McKelty to be trying to play that role because there's taller defenders out there that are going to win the one-on-ones a lot easier, unfortunately. Yeah. And again, it comes down to a bit of experience as well. Like he's I think, doing a fantastic job, but he puts too much pressure on him to make him that our tall target, I think. Yeah.
Seeing mixed messages about Bolter. Some people saying he's available this week. Some saying he's listed as another week short being available as well. I mean, the reality is if Bolter is available this week, he's coming straight in. No questions asked.
100%. 100%.
If Jaden Short's fit and available, he'll come straight in. Although, look, he hasn't had the best of year. But I really hope it's not at the expense of Tom Brown will be the only thing I would say there.
No, we can't take Tom Brown out, unless he's injured. I mean, there may be a game that they might give him a rest just for management, I would expect. But I would hate to see them. They're looking for reasons to give Tom Brown a rest. Like he's one of our most consistent footballers and needs to play every game, in my opinion. I can't see him dropping out of our best 23.
Now, the problem we're going to have is the similar problem to last week where you've got Alex Pearce and Luke Ryan patrolling the defensive 50 for Freo, who are equally as good as May and Lever in that regard. So, to your point earlier, if we don't have a quick fix for our forward structure, like a Samson Ryan maybe, to present and be an option and at least make someone accountable, if we can't fix that, I can't see how we're going to put a score on the board. But if we can fix it and we can at least halve some of the contest, we do give ourselves a chance.
Yeah, like I recall a couple of, before the season started a couple of seasons ago, I think it was a pre-season game down in Tassie against Hawthorn. I saw that we were there was a large emphasis on hitting targets. Like it may not necessarily have been long kicks or anything like that. It was just target to target to target to target. And we were able to score off the back of that. Now, I mean, maybe that might be a little bit too predictable trying to aim for that, but I wouldn't be against seeing that as a strategy just to see if it could work for us, looking ahead and trying to hit targets to create some scoring pressure. But I don't know, it may not hold up, as far as trying to be effective. So they need to come up with something, though, because whatever our strategy is right now, it's just not quite working. And I think it stems down to us, lobbing the ball inside forward 50, expecting to be a tall target like a Lynch or a Bolter, and there just isn't one there. And it just doesn't work because the ball's not hitting the ground enough for us to, to try and create that chaos goals out of nowhere like we have done in the past. It's just being turned over and our opponents are able to score off the back of it too easy.
Now, on the back of Pickett tagging Petrarca last week, if we make the assumption he's going to do something similar again this week, would you send him to Sarong or Fife or someone else, Brayshaw?
One of the three, for sure. I mean, probably Sarong, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know who you put on Fife. Maybe Camden, if he's playing sort of that wing role, through the midfield, you probably get someone like that on him. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see that. But we want to try and shut down Fife as best we can. As I said, his form's been quite good. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, I think it's all in the start. How we start. If if we match them at halftime, let's hope we can match them in the second half as well. It would be interesting to see how we go.
All right, well, we'll get a tip, including margin for this one. Feel free to send them through in the comments as well. What are you thinking, Carl? Who's going to win and by how much?
I'm going to tip us, the Tigers, by 8 points.
I reckon we're a legit chance. I'll say Richmond by 12. I agree. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. But if we can't fix that forward piece, we're in all sorts. But I'm just kind of praying and hoping that we've learned a little bit from last week that we can take into this week. Make a little tweak here and there, and hopefully we can snatch a win.
I'll say this much: I'm just glad that Monday doesn't play anymore because we don't have to have
the amount of times that comes up in conversation now it's just folklore that he sunk us a couple of times. Oh, that one for G. Oh, that was painful. Very, very painful.
Oh, it was so close yet so far, that game.
I know. All right, well, that is it for the show tonight. Thank you, Carl, for jumping on. Much appreciated. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe, follow, retweet, whatever you got to do on whatever platform you're watching on. And we will be back on Monday night, hopefully with a win under our belt. We just do our best to keep it all real, call it how it is, and we enjoy everyone's input. So thank you again, Carl. And until next time, go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Get the win.